Good evening. Good evening. Come on, let me see you wave at me. Send up some hearts or some likes and let me know that you're on with me. It's Wednesday night, so that means it's time for the parking lot conversation. And I think I've got this fixed now where I can see you all commenting in the chat section on my page, and so I can watch the delay. I can watch the delay. But I'm glad that you all are joining in, and I hope that your week has been good. We're at that midpoint right now, and the midpoint is a good place to pause. It's a good place to reflect, and it's a good place to set your sight toward moving toward your weekend. So we're doing that, and we're coming back to a topic that we started on last week, and it's not a topic that we should only talk about um, once or twice a year, but we're going to talk about relationships with the awareness that we are still in Domestic Violence Month. This is still Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So as you're coming in, say hi. Wave at me down in the chat. I see a few folk coming in. Go ahead and let me know that you're on. I want to be able to call your name out and say welcome, especially if you are for your very first time tuning in to this virtual radio show. I want you to come in. I'm coming on just a little earlier than normal. That way we get a few more folk maybe potentially out there on the East Coast, and a few folk there in Central Standard Time. That way you're already, you're still going up, and the intentionality is to catch you right after you are leaving church and you are on that parking lot and you are having those conversations with fellow individuals who are members of your local congregations. And so your pastors have let you out. You're all finished with evening Bible study for the day. And I'm glad that you have decided to stick around, because I am right out here on the parking lot and I'm ready to chat with you. I see we got a few folk coming in. Marquis is on. Marquis is a regular attendee on Wednesday nights. And then hey D, y'all give it up for D. We gonna give her a round of applause. We haven't seen her in a minute, but we're glad to have you back. And you all make sure you let somebody know that we're on. We're talking about relationships, and we had some great discussion. And then we had some individuals who were decided to be vulnerable and share their stories with us. Before I go on, let me do this. I want to highlight this this book. This was the book that we highlighted on last week, written by Jay Harris, Healing Voices. If you don't have it, you should put it in your library. Healing Voices is the book by Jay Harris. And in this book, she takes the time to share 11 real life stories of women who have experienced various forms of violence. Now, it was domestic violence, there was rape, in some of those situations, there was even incest, and there was other acts of violence. And in this book, she is able to weave together the common thread, and that is their faith in God. And so these women are anonymous, but their stories are uplifting and their voices are uplifting. And each story has a reflection that is written by a female clergy person to help discern the message of hope that reaches stories to reveal. So I hope that you will download that book. I hope that you'll go over to Amazon and order this text for somebody. Order it for yourself. And maybe you should read through it. If you know there is someone who is struggling, who needs an inspiration, who needs to hear a voice, this is a great text that can help have that initial conversation with somebody who you might know that might be going through a, a violent situation or is in a toxic relationship. All right. And remember, we talked just a little last week around the fact that uh, relationships uh, can go south, not just for women, but we had individuals, who had chimed in, men who said, you know what, I have experienced it as well. So toxic relationships can happen on either side. All right, on either side. And more than likely, we know someone, you know someone. So while we're having the conversation, let folk know that they can come in. And if they are willing to share, we would love to hear their stories. And I thought that the individuals who shared on last week did an absolutely beautiful job making sure that that story got out. Okay, I think I've got some help down in the comments. Oh my goodness, is it sold out on Amazon? Oh wow. Okay. So that being said, I will make sure that we figure out how to get those texts out. I know how to get a hold of the author, and so maybe before the end of this conversation, maybe even the author will chime in and let us know how we could get our hands on a copy of that text if the book is already sold out on Amazon, and if that's the case, I want to make sure that we figure out how to get that book in everyone's hands. And if it's sold out, that's a good thing. All right. I want to take that as a good thing, and I want to take that as a sign that somebody must have watched this episode last week and heard our conversation, and individuals follow through. And so we'll follow up with the author to see where that's going. I've got my copy here, and so I hope that you will be able to grab one, and we'll work on that. I want to put a question to you all that's tuned in, and the question that I want to start out with this week is for those who have experienced toxic relationships, or if you have not directly experienced a toxic relationship, maybe you know somebody who has experienced a toxic relationship. So the question is, what impact has the relationship, or rather, what impact did the relationship have on the individual, whether it be you or a friend, physically, emotionally, or mentally? What impact did the toxic relationship have on you, whether it was physical, emotional, or mentally? I wonder if you would like to share with that. Hey D, thank you for putting that in there. The Kindle version is available. Okay, that's fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. If the Kindle version is available, that always is an option for those of you who have an iPad, or if you have a Kindle or your smartphone, and you can download books on your smartphone. Don't That is a way to get your copy of Healing Voices by Arthur J. Harris, because we are being told uh, that it is sold out on Amazon right now. And so I want to we're following up. We got some help down in the comments section that tell us that they are available via Kindle. All right. So the question I want to pause to ask to start our initial conversation off on tonight is, what impacts have you seen or have you experienced uh, that a toxic relationship has caused on your physical, on the emotional, or mentally? Now, remember, toxic relationships can happen to women, toxic relationships can happen to men. All right. And so I want you to feel free to chime in. If I have military who are tuned in and watching right now, here in just a little bit, you'll be able to call in, and you can call in anonymously if you so choose. And if you desire to, share and you don't mind getting in the comments, you are more than welcome to do that. But I always want to make sure that we are caring for and monitoring your confidentiality. So I'll ask the question, and I think we have some conversation starting down there in the chats. Don't forget that the co-host, you make the show, and the more that you all share, the more that you are engaged, the better the conversation is. So I'll just pose the question again. I think I've seen one or two folk pop in, and maybe somebody popped out, but I want to ask the question again: is what impact has um, a toxic relationship had on you or somebody that you experienced? What was that impact? Was it physically, mentally, or emotionally? And let's just have a little conversation there. So Marquis says, referring to former friendships, one impact has been a traumatic response to meeting new people. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing. I find myself over questioning things and people, and not neglecting my instinct, that gut feeling. So I think that's real. And that is something that we ought to have conversation about, because uh, trauma can most certainly occur in unhealthy relationships, in toxic relationships. And the idea of bringing somebody new into your life, bringing another person into your close circle after you have experienced a traumatic relationship, of course, you find yourself um, feeling all different kinds of ways about, should I or should I not open myself up? And so that there's trauma there. There's trauma there. And just from my seat, uh, there has to be a way to say, how do we begin to have um, some healing work done after individuals have found themselves in traumatic situations, in traumatic relationships, because it's real. And so often we are told to just simply pray and you go on about your business. You pray and you go on about your business, or keep living, and things will get better. But healing has to take place, and there is and can be a strategy um, that can help propel people forward toward moving toward healing in a more fruitful way. So I appreciate you sharing that. I got down concerning what I've seen other people. Marquis says, I've known some folk who have something similar to PTSD. And I think that's real. Post traumatic syndrome is not simply limited to individuals who have experienced some type of war. A lot of times we immediately connect um, uh, PTSD to those who are in uniform, and most certainly we should always keep in mind those who are suffering from and those who serve in uniform, uh, who have had to see and experience things that have uh, caused post traumatic syndrome in their life, PTSD. But I do believe that you are right. It can occur in other terrains, in other areas. So, certainly in a toxic relationship, think about all of the things that so often individuals go through in relationships that they see, that they experience, whether it be physically. An individual can only take so much physically. Um, Mentally, when the psyche begins to have various breakdowns, and there's questioning there, there's all of the things that happen in the mind. And so certainly PTSD is a conversation that most certainly can be attached to toxic relationships and those who are certainly in domestic violence relationships from my seat. And some of the same healing strategies that are used to help journey with individuals um, who suffer with PTSD, I would submit are strategies and tools that we can use to help encourage and support individuals moving forward out, or who are just coming out of toxic relationships. I think the author is on the line of Healing Voices, and I just want to put a pin right there. And Jr., if you are on the line, I wonder because we got word that the book is sold out on Amazon, but it was available on Kindle form. If you can let us know what the text is looking like, and if you'll just drop down in the comments and let us know where else we can pick up the text, if it is indeed sold out on Amazon, which I think is fantastic. uh Let us know before we are all finished up for tonight. um so I think this is a great question here, coming from Marquis. Chaps, any experience you've had that you'd like to share? So I think there are some experiences. Well, I don't have to think. There are some experiences that I have been placed to care for individuals who are walking through those type of situations, and always remind people, especially those who desire to be in relationships. We talked a little bit about that on last week. There is within everybody a distinct desire, I believe, to be cared for and to be with someone. And so often individuals move quickly. They move quickly. And just for reflection of one, I have found myself coaching individuals who are married, who have found themselves in toxic relationships that become violent, or they become where the individual does not desire the other person sexually, and one mate chooses to try to force themselves on the other, and so those are um, very thin lines there, especially if if the wife or the husband is saying, I no longer desire to be sexually intimate with you, and then the other is still forcing themselves on their spouse. It become that within itself becomes toxic. That within itself now comes to a place where it could easily be violent. And so in those situations, um, from my seat, uh, one, I always start with first hearing the individual. So oftentimes, um, those who are called in to care for are I don't you don't even have to be, an individual who's hired to do a job. This could be a friend. So oftentimes people want to rush people to um feeling better. How do I make it better? A lot of people always want to make things better. And there's nothing wrong with that. How do I make it better? But we skip the necessary steps, which is first to hear the individual, hear what it is that they are experiencing, hear what it is that have happened, because out of that hearing, out of listening, we then we don't have to figure it out. More than likely, the person who is sharing begins to walk themselves into what they already know they should be doing. They already begin to have conversation with themselves about saying, here is the direction that I need to go. But because so often individuals are uncomfortable sitting in the silence, are uncomfortable simply listening to the individuals share, they're very raw, they're very vivid stories and experiences, because it brings a level of uncomfortability for some of us. We choose to skip the listening and the hearing and allowing them to talk things out and try to jump straight to um, we try to jump straight to the how do we make things better. And so I would like to submit that in those scenarios where I found myself trying to make sure that I was caring for those um, who were in marital relationships that have gone toxic, in intimate relationships that were no longer healthy, I always start by hearing and listening. And so that would be one tool that I would encourage everybody, just put in your toolbox on the night. Listen and hear first. And out of that, then we can better discern what direction it is that we go. Now, Marquis, I hope that gets to your question there. Let me know if it does, or if I need to explain more. Um, D says they carry PTSD into the new relationships as well, and that is so true. We because here's the piece. Because of the climate, I don't know if that's the right word, uh, but so oftentimes the culture says we have to get, you got to be in a relationship. You have to be with someone. You need to be with someone. You know, then we find ourselves attached to the wrong person too early. Because the reality of it is, some folk, they might be right for where you are right now. I want you all to hear me. Individuals could be exactly right for where you are right now, but there's a whole lot of individuals, but you have to see beyond where you are right now. Where is it that you're going? See, that's the partner that you want. And all the time, individuals talk about that evenly yoked scripture. Folk really love to use that scripture. Y'all are evenly yoked. And they have looked at that scripture through the wrong lens. You don't want to marry somebody for where you are. And I hope that down in the chat, feel free to put that. Don't marry somebody for where you are. Don't get in a relationship with an individual who is on a level for just right now, especially if you can discern from the jump, this is somebody that is not going to be able to go the long haul. Does that make sense to you all? If I need to clear that up, let me know. But send up some thumbs, send up some hearts, so that I want to make sure that you all are understanding me. There are relationships out there, and I'm gonna put these message back up there, uh, because her point is, I think, is so important. We carry PTSD into new relationships, but so many individuals uh, get into relationships because of the culture, and they hear all of the chirping from individuals who are supposedly in a relationship. Little do they know what goes on behind closed doors. And so what I want to submit is, you don't marry, you don't even get in a relationship with somebody that is at level 2, and you're trying to land at level 8. You don't get in a relationship with an individual who is short term, and you're playing a long term game. You're trying to throw a long ball here. That's not somebody that you want, because at some point the time is going to be wasted, and just depending on the person's personality and their traits and their upbringing, that thing is going to break down at some point. And if you have just gotten out of a relationship that broke down, that is not moving, you played the short term thinking that it could be a long term, all of those kind of conversations, and it turned sour, and it turned unhealthy, and it turned toxic, and it began to wear on you mentally and emotionally and even physically. Let me bring this up, because I recently saw a picture of someone, and the Lord showed me that picture of that individual, and I began to look at that individual, and like clockwork, I said to myself, I know this individual shouldn't be carrying the physical weight that they're carrying. This person had lost weight. This person looked excellent, was thin. I mean, eating healthy. And I looked at the picture of them just the other day, and I said to myself, the Lord said it in my spirit just immediately. It's the relationship. Because now the person has begun to gain all of the weight back. See, it happens so quickly. It happens so quickly because we try to attach ourselves to folk who are short term, and that has nothing to do with being evenly yoked. All right. So you all let me know what your thoughts are about that. But I saw that person's picture, and I know I kind of got off right there. But I say that to go back to Dee's point. I believe that individual desired to be with somebody, probably had an experience, had a background of a relationship that was probably unhealthy and probably toxic, and then attached themselves to another person who was toxic and unhealthy. And as a result, now this person has begun to gain weight back that they had lost. all right, that they had lost, and seeing the picture of now and where they were, I'm I didn't even have to question, because within me I immediately said it's the relationship. So you must be so careful, because we do know in scripture that everything that happens in the spirit realm has to manifest somewhere in the physical. Now I feel like I'm preaching, all right, and I'm not intending to do that, but that's just a nugget for somebody out there that needs to hear that. So even in relationships, everything that happens in your psyche, in that you are holding internally, that's what we mean by in the spirit realm. All of the various things that you're battling, they have to come out somewhere. They have to show up somewhere, and it will show up in your physical. It will show up in your physical, in your health. High blood pressure. It'll show up in your constant migraines. It'll show up in your weight. It'll show up in fatigue, in all different kinds of ways. And by that, I say you need to unattach yourself. You need to get out of there right now, because it's already showing signs that you are in a toxic place. And so we carry that, to get back to Dee's point. People do carry that into new relationships, because we don't give ourselves the time necessary to do the healing work, to engage with who you are, and to know who you are, your own self-worth, your value, what you bring to the conversation, what you bring to any relationship, whether it's intimate or whether it's just family, whether it's friends, whether it's at your job. You have to know what you bring and what you carry, because if you don't, and other individuals do see what you bring, and you have no awareness of it, that's when we get into the issues of individuals being able to influence you with their power and over exert themselves. So thank you, Dee, for sharing that. I'm trying to scroll down here in this comment section, because that was vital, and Marquis and Dee got me some. Johnny's, I see you on. Don't marry someone for where you are. I don't know what else we're going to talk about on tonight, but I think that's a major piece. And if you know somebody right now, for individuals that might be tuned in, if you know somebody right now who is in a relationship and they married somebody for where they are, not for where they're going, you need to send them this link right now, because what we want to do is save lives out here. And I hope that you will send some hearts up, send some likes up right there, so y'all can send this algorithm through the roof, because the reality of it is we can save some folk. You can save your niece, you can save your nephew, your sons, your daughters, your grandnieces, your grandchildren. Save their life by letting them know it's okay to not marry someone. It's okay to not be in a relationship for where they are, because when you begin to look for a partner, when you're looking for somebody that you desire to be in relationship with, to be intimate, to share your life with, you want to be looking for where it is that you desire to go, not for right here, because that's where we get into the sticky situation. All right. Because in your mind, I'm growing, I'm evolving, I'm moving this direction. And if you married somebody that's got a 1950s mentality about what a husband and a wife ought to look like, we're going to be in trouble. Okay? Let's just keep it real. You cannot find yourself in a situation where you have attached yourself to somebody that's 10, 20 years, or that's been raised to see a relationship a certain kind of way, and you know that you are light years ahead of that person, we're going to have a problem. We're going to have a problem there. So look for the long game. We're looking for the long game, and in that, hopefully we can cut out some of these toxic relationships because your antennas start going off. People start having necessary conversations on an early front to say, you know what, you don't have to be with this person, or you know what, you've only seen this city. You've never seen anybody outside of this city. You've never seen anybody outside of our county. You know, get to know somebody that come from a different background. So don't marry, don't get in a relationship for where you are. You want to begin to move toward where it is that you desire to go. And as you're looking, as you're searching, you're looking for saying, I'm looking for somebody that's got the long game. Matter of fact, they can probably be ahead of me, and that's something that you'll have to look on your own front. What is it that I desire? What is it that I look for in a relationship? But if you're an individual who are just coming out of a very toxic relationship and they are happening in the church, I don't even want to deny that fact. And if you're tuned in, don't click off because I said that. Stay right here. There are folk in the church who are in toxic relationships right now. And some are sitting in the pulpit. Some is the first lady. Some is the head deaconess. Somebody is an usher on the back door. It doesn't. There's some folk that are sitting in the choir stand, and they are putting their makeup on. They are they are getting dressed. They are now they're coming into Zooms, and they're not saying anything. Nobody's having the conversation because it's taboo, or everybody knows that it's going on, but everybody chooses to not say anything and to ignore it. But I want to suggest now is the time to release yourself from that. And if you need some encouragement, here's a place where I am more than willing to help you find the encouragement. But what from a pastoral place, do not sit there any longer. And last week, down in the comment section, it was shared with us that you got to have a plan. And I know that I believe it was John Reese that talked about that. Matter of fact, I got this up there right now. John Reese, I'm going to say it tonight. You get applause for that. Make sure that folk have a plan. They need to have a plan in place. They need to have, okay, $10. I'm putting $10 aside this week. I'm putting $15 aside next week. Here's the date that I plan on departing. Here's the safe haven. Here's the safe place that I plan on going to. And then if there is children involved, and we forget about this piece, so oftentimes, especially in these households, there are children that are in these very toxic relationships, children that are involved in these very toxic relationships. And if you get one out, you get all of them out of there, all right? Because what we don't want to do is continue the cycle. And that's when they start talking about, generational curses. That's what a generational curse is. Somebody that has watched somebody else, beat on their mama, or beat on their daddy, or speak ill, or play all of these various psychological games, withhold money. You can't spend what I don't give you, and you give the other individual $10, but they can't go get their own job. All of these are forms of violence. And when individuals see that over and over and over and over, those folk grow up. They grow up, and then they get in a relationship, and then it happens again, and they do it. And then they have kids, and then it happens again, and they do it, and so on and so on. Now we've got ourselves in a generational cycle. And so that's what we want to do, is break the generational cycles. All right. That's what we're trying to do here. That's what we want to do. And so if you know somebody for me to go way back, give yourself time to heal, and then find yourself somebody that has the right skills and the right let me just say this. A lot of pastors are not equipped to do the kind of necessary counseling. So as much as you desire to go to your pastor, I want you to seek help. And last week we did put the domestic violence hotline up there. If there's somebody down there in the chat who has the number for the domestic hotline, and I've got that information up on my screen, and I'll try to paste it at some point. But if somebody else could help support me there, we put that number up. Call these numbers. We want you to call numbers where we know you're going to get solid information, where you're going to get solid help, where you're going to be able to get tools like counseling that is clinical, has a clinical base to it. And so those are the pieces that we want to get on. What are the tools? What are the things that you need to help individuals move up and out of toxic relationships? All right. I want to put this up there. John Reese says you can lose yourself trying to pour yourself into someone that is empty. You can absolutely lose yourself trying to give all that you have into somebody that didn't have anything. Now, I think we all need to hear that, all right? Because it's a both and. Relationships are both and. It can't be one person in the thing by themselves. It has to be a both and. That's part of the equally yoked part, all right? That's part of the equally yoked part. It's a both and. So don't find yourself sitting in a situation where you're giving, and the person provides nothing to you. And let me just pause right here and say, not only will that happen in our intimate relationships, for some of us, that's happening in our church. For some of us, that's in our careers. For some of us, that's in our family. So we need to be cognizant and aware that that little piece right there, that little relationship piece, can happen across the board. It can happen across the board at any point. And you have to have an awareness within yourself to say, I'm pumping the brakes right here, because I am giving far more. When my health starts breaking down, when I'm starting to feel fatigued, when I'm running on E, when I'm nervous, I find myself nervous, when I feel like I can't say anything, or I'm stepping on eggshells, or if I say this, is it going to trigger this tonight? If I do this, is it going to trigger this emotion individual tonight? If I go over here and speak to that person, what's going to happen when I get back in the car? If you are asking those kind of questions, you need to pump the brakes, and you need to pause and say, there's a problem here. Recognize the signs. Begin to recognize the signs and say there's something off. So I think John Reese is definitely right. Don't try to pour yourself into something that is not giving you anything back. And I hope that makes sense for those of you that are listening and tuned in. And I'm going to put a plug right there. Please, y'all make sure do me a favor and click the share button. Matter of fact, don't do me a favor. Do somebody that could potentially be in a harmful relationship right now and is sitting in some household right now at this time of night, and they are wondering whether or not they're going to see tomorrow. Click the share button so that we get the word out to them. This ain't about me. We want to get the word out to them, and I want them to hear the tools. I want them to see the domestic hotline number, and I want them to see that folk are having a conversation, and that there are tools out there where they can go to receive the necessary help. So, uh, who do I got down here? Yeah, John Johnny's, you right on. Everyone has baggage. It's how you manage it. It's one thing to have someone who has a carry-on luggage, but when you have someone who has 4 bags, a U-Haul, and a storage unit, now, now you just said a whole word there. You just said a whole word there, because the reality of it is everybody comes with something. Everybody comes with something to the relationship. But when you hauling, like you said, when you got carry on, when you got a whole U-Haul and you got to unload a storage unit, there's a problem. That means right there, you weren't ready for a relationship. And then you're about to try to attach yourself to somebody that is ready. There, right at that point, that's when I would say it's intentional. It's intentional. You have decided, since it happened to me, since I've had these experiences, then I'm going to continue, and it must be all right. And it's not. It's not okay. It is not all right. So, Johnny's, you spot on. We got to be careful about picking up folk who got all kinds of luggage that we don't know about. And I think that goes back to a conversation that I was hearing earlier, or maybe it was last night on a radio show that I was listening to as I was just driving home, and they were just saying there's some folk that you need to ask some questions on the front end of relationships. So don't feel like it's not proper to ask necessary questions on the front side. Don't go and do that. You start asking questions from day one. And a lot of growing up, who your daddy, who your mom, who your cutting them, and all that. One, because we wanted to make sure I ain't marrying my cousin. So you know ask the basic questions. Start asking the questions. What happened in your previous relationships? What happened the last time that you were married? What was that situation about? What are your thoughts on what's the role of individuals who are saying, I desire to be in relationship with you? What do you think about individuals who are career minded, who desire to move forward on a career trajectory? What do you ask those necessary questions? Do I desire to live in this particular city, in this state, my whole life? Or do I want to move somewhere? There is no out of bounds question when you're talking about your health, when you're talking about your mind, when you're talking about your spirit, your heart, and ultimately your life. Ask the necessary questions, because if you don't ask, you can never get a baseline, and you can never begin to get a rhythm for what's going on. All right. So I think Johnny's is spot on. And you have the only way you begin to discern the baggage and the U-Haul and the storage unit is if you ask questions. Don't jump into relationships and you have not asked necessary, very pertinent questions. I do want to know about your mama and your daddy. What was their relationship like? What what did you experience growing up? You ask those questions, because as you begin to ask those questions, you'll begin to get a better understanding of what it is that they're carrying, and whether or not is this a person that's simply for where I'm at, or is this a person that has the potential to be long term? But if you never ask those questions, you're not going to get a scan on any of that. All right. So as folk are tuning in, and I see some folks still joining on, the one thing I've been asking, make sure you click like and click the share. Not for me, but click the like and click the share, because somebody on your news feed, on your timeline, very well needs to see this conversation tonight, and you can help us by clicking that share button and being, having the courage to put the parking lot conversation out there on your news feed tonight. All right. So I want, yeah, the church sometimes can be the toxic element. My goodness, we really need to have conversation there, and I hope that folk can see that up on the screen. The church is sometimes the toxic element, and let me say, for those that are tuning, it blew my mind. We took a class, and I think it might. Matter of fact, I believe my classmate was on there. John Reese was in that class when the we looked at um the story of of um Boaz, and seeing that whole story through a new lens, and so oftentimes, and I bring up that story to preface and say that the church has not done a, a they have not done their job on when it comes to relationships. And part of that is because they have just refused to grow within their own selves, to grow within their own understanding. With all thy ways get an understanding, in order to say, how do we better equip ourselves in the time that we are in right now? Okay, so you got a lot of folk who are sitting in church hearing, go find your Boaz. You need your Boaz. Go get your Boaz gleaming in the field. All of that. Instead of saying, how do we help you set yourself up for success? How do we make sure that you have a car? How do we make sure that you have money? How do we make sure that you are thriving with an education and a job? And in due time, the Lord's going to bring somebody along for where you are. But you should not have to be dependent upon, waiting on, because there's a whole lot of pieces to that Boaz story that are just wrong. She basically had to go, it talk about her going to lay at the feet. Y'all hear what I'm saying? It talks about her going, they had to get her she got all cleaned and dolled up and, put on her smell goods and cloaked herself, and then went out there at nighttime. Now, what does that sound like to y'all? And we're still teaching that in churches in 2020. In 2020, we're still having those conversations, those type of teachings. Something is wrong there. Something is wrong there. If you can't see with your own eyes, I don't want my daughter, I don't want my granddaughter, I don't want my niece to put themselves in that situation. There's a problem, okay? There's a real problem there. So I do agree with D in regard that the church can definitely become, as she says, the toxic element. Y'all give me a second right here. I'm just going to grab a little water. I just need just a little water there. Okay. So let me let me yeah. John Reese, 95% of young boys that witness their mothers being abused will grow up to be abusers themselves. Save the next generation and leave the toxic relationships. I hope that because it happens so quickly. This is goes back to just a bit of the generational piece. When you see somebody, when you see your mother, when you see some are being raised by their aunts, uh being beat on and being abused and mistreated, and you see that it begins to play into your own psyche, and that is an astounding number. 95%. 95%. And nobody in the church gets up and says that. Nobody says, do you know that 95% of young boys that witness their mothers being abused will grow up to become abusers themselves and continue this generation, this particular. There's something wrong there. There's something wrong there, and that's why we're having this conversation, because somebody got out of Bible study tonight. Somebody got out of church meeting tonight, and like I said, is walking around the house on eggshells. They're walking around the house on eggshells because they are in one of these kind of situations. And once again, there are children involved in these situations. And the only way that you can begin to break that 95% number that was just shared with us is by saying that we are going to get these folk out of these situations and help them start their lives in a healthy way. All right. We're going to help them start their lives in a healthy way. If you're just tuning in, for those that might just be tuning in, don't forget to click the like and click the share button. And don't forget, you are welcome to tune in. And I've got to this is a long one here. So I started the question off tonight by saying, what impacts have you seen on those relationships, whether they be physically, emotionally, or mentally, And I like I said, I've just shared that I just saw somebody, and I said to myself, I know it's the relationship. I could see it on them. I could see it on them, because it's not healthy when you have found yourself with somebody who never encourages you. You find somebody who talks down to you, who will even talk down to you publicly in front of other people, who treats you as second class. There's those are subtle signs there that there's something wrong. If the mentality is that you just be quiet and you just go along, um, we have an issue there. So for those that might just be joining, feel free to jump down there in the chat section and share with us. My goodness, the time is rolling by on us, for sure. Let me see here. Yeah. Now, that's what folk need to hear, Johnny's. The Ruth and the Boaz was a it was a contract agreement that y'all. Let me get a little water right there. Hang on. It was a contract. It was a contract. Now let me say. Now let's just have this conversation, just a little bit of it, and maybe this ought to be a Friday night parking lot conversation. We might could do that at another time. Y'all let me know down in the comment section. But let me submit. Let me put it back up there. Johnny's, you are spot on. It was a contract agreement. Y'all hear? There's a difference. They have tried to treat uh the Boaz and the Ruth. I mean, Ruth and Boaz like it was Sleepless in Seattle. or something like that. That is not what that story. It was not a love story. It was a contract agreement that said we don't have no money, we don't have a house, we have nothing, and we've got to depend on you. It was a contract agreement. Now, to that point, there are some folk who are okay with that. Y'all hear me? If y'all hear me, throw some thumbs up in the air. Y'all let me know that you're still there and I haven't lost you. I just want to have this little we might should have this conversation on a Friday night maybe when we could get some more folk in here because uh there's nothing wrong if you know that you are moving into a contract agreement. You know, if it's one of those uh you if it's one of those kind of relationship, if both of you have agreed to that, that's fine. But if you're looking for a love story, we need to give you other tools. And everybody's not looking for that. There are some folk who are simply looking for a contractual relationship. If that's what you want, that's fine. I'm not knocking you. It ain't my job to knock you. But what I do want to say is, from a spiritual standpoint, it's time out for folk to continue to preach that particular story as if it were a love story, because it wasn't. I think I don't have to think. I know John East was exactly right. That was an agreement that was made. All right. And that needs to be a conversation that folk need to have. Do you desire that kind of relationship? There are some folk, you desire that. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you are desiring a love story, then we need to ask some other questions on that. All right. Uh, yeah. So Marquis, the helpmate, the role, though, can take on so many different lives, and that's okay. So, or take on, right? It can take on various roles, and um and just consider how the roles have shifted even now. I can look at certain congregations. I can even look at the congregation that I was raised in there in Fort Worth, and for years it was a women who cooked. I can remember their faces very vividly. I could call the roll right now. From my grandmother, on down the line, I see all of their faces. And except for maybe one or so, they're gone. Now, the unique piece to this, and I'm going somewhere with it, is that it's not their daughters who cook now. It's their sons. It's their sons who do the cooking for that congregation all the time. Matter of fact, nobody wants anybody else to cook. Their sons do the cooking. And so at home, they're still doing the cooking. They're doing the cooking. So roles have begun to switch. All right. The help me, all of those pieces. You have to have basic conversations about, how do you feel about cooking? Do you like to cook? Do you want to cook? Don't go and marry somebody, and you haven't asked small necessary questions on the front side. All right. So, and that might be a Friday night conversation, but I definitely want to have a conversation about that agreement piece. All right. Because, as much as, I chuckle about it, that's real. That's real. And we don't have to look far. You don't have to look far for folk that have found themselves in contractual relationships. All right. But that's exactly what the Ruth and the Boaz story was. It was not a love story. It was not a Hollywood ending. There was no kiss on top of the Eiffel Tower. Nothing like that. That's not what that story was. And if you still finding yourself hearing somebody who's preaching it that way, go and tell them that you heard it on this show. I don't mind telling them myself that they got it wrong. All right. Yes. So yeah, let me put this up there right there. John Reese has just put for the anonymous and confidential help, which is 24 hours and 7 days a week. You can call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. That's for anonymous confidential help. And I know that that rings a lot of bells. For those that might be tuned in and you're in the military, don't ever forget that your chaplain is wholeheartedly confidential and can work along, especially here in the Navy and in the Marine Corps, can work alongside your SARC and your victim advocates, your UVAs. So please know who your UVAs are on your installations and in your commands. Know who your command SARC is. If you don't know who your command SARC is, most certainly your chaplain will know and can get you connected with that person and can work behind the scenes to support you uh, uh, in a confidential way. And they can make sure that you have the right advice as regard to whether or not you would like to do a restricted or an unrestricted report. All right. So I'm going to put that number back up there for those that are on the civilian side that are tuned in. You are more than welcome and know that this is a tool for you. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233, 1-800-787-3224. All right. So if you know somebody who might need to see this particular radio show on tonight, make sure that you send it to them so that they can get the help that it is that we desire for them to have. Constance, you a first time. You get so glad to have you on tonight. I want you to join us right back here next week, okay? Um, now, I think we've had a lot of conversation. This was our part 2, but I would love to hear our reflection on the contract relationships and what that looks like. And we talked last week a bit about the how did your image of God influence whether or not you stayed or whether or not you left? And so many were vulnerable and decided to share with us on last week. But I want to continue to remind people that so oftentimes the image of God plays such a critical role in whether or not people decide to stay in relationships. And that's just the reality of it. That is just the reality of it. And not only, and sometimes people have mixed up God with congregation. Y'all hear me say that right there? Some folk have mixed up God and replaced the God with congregation. What would the congregation say about me? What are they going to think about me? What happens? How would I be ridiculed? All of those various questions that come along with that kind of change and transition. So sometimes is not the image of God. Sometimes people are far more concerned with what other folk will think, not realizing that those are the very folk who wish they had the courage and wish they had the strength to get out of the relationship that they found themselves in so many years ago. All right. So that being said, I want to thank you all for tuning in on tonight. Once again, I believe that it was put in there earlier about how you can get this marvelous book, Healing Voices by Jay Harris, which is 11 real life stories of women who have experienced various forms of violence. And in each one of these various stories, the common thread is that they survived because of their faith in God. And in this text, you'll hear and see that each story is followed by a beautiful spiritual reflection that's been written by a female clergy person that helped discern the message of hope that each of the wonderful stories reveal. So I hope that you'll get your hands on this text, not necessarily just for yourself, but make sure that if you know there's somebody that needs to have this text in their hands, you purchase it for them. And we were told that it was sold out on Amazon. If that's the case, I'm absolutely loving that. But there are Kindle versions out there, and I believe down in the chat it was placed where you could also get that text online in another place. So that being said, y'all, I want to thank you for tuning in. And, I've already cast my vote for the folk back at home. By the way, since I got folk on the line, and I believe that I definitely know there are some Texas folk on the line, I'm so proud of Texas showing up. I've been seeing the videos and the lives of the lines in Texas for early voting. Y'all, please go pick up Cudden, go pick up your niece, go pick up your nephew, and y'all carry them to the poll to cast their vote. I sent mine in safely and securely via our wonderful U.S. Postal Service, and so many of the very folk in my home community and folk in our local congregations have been longstanding servants of the post office, and they take great pride in the work that they do every day. And so, if you haven't cast your vote, you don't have to wait until November the 3rd. That's the last day of voting. That is the last day of voting, is November the 3rd. But you can go ahead and cast your vote now and know that your voice will be heard. Also, okay, I think I see it up there. Healing Voices can be bought at the Virtual Bookworm or Barnes and Noble. So you can go online to the Virtual Bookworm, or you could go to Barnes and Noble. Thank you so much, Janice, for putting that up there. You coming through again? Y'all helping me do that real quick. That way I can talk, and that helps me out. So I appreciate y'all. Love you so much. Oh, y'all pick up that text. I'm gonna put that back up there again. You can buy that book at the Virtual Bookworm or Barnes and Noble, and I know you can get to Barnes and Noble online as well. And let's sell out of books as well, not just on Amazon, but y'all go and tap out Barnes and Noble and the Virtual Bookworm and get these books in the hands of individuals who need inspiration and need to know that others have experienced, others have survived, and others are here to tell the story and say it can be done. And I thank you for taking part in doing that and making a conscious decision on your side to say, I'm going to break the cycle. I'm going to break the cycle. And it starts with each of us doing our part. And that being said, please know that if nobody else has told you on this Wednesday, I don't even know if your pastors told you, know that I love you, but beyond me, know that God loves you. And that within itself is more than enough. I look forward to seeing you right back here. I came on a little early this week, y'all. And so I think we'll try this again. I'll see you right back here next week at 6:15 Pacific Standard Time. And if I were on the ship, I would say, chaps out. Good night and God bless.